Okay, welcome everybody. We're here today to share some information with you from two of our experts at Midwest Native Skills Institute about primitive fire starting. So first, gentlemen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Well, they know me. I'm Tom Laskowski. Been running the school for a long time.
And I'm Glen Monaghan. I've been helping Tom with a lot of the classes, videos.
Actually, he's modest. He's our head instructor and the brains behind all the fire videos. So give
great.
Glenn a plug there.
Okay. Well, let's start off just by talking about why primitive fire starting skills. What's important about them? Who should know it? How is it useful?
I'll start. In survival, fire is really critical. It can do a lot for you. The first thing we say in our classes, it'll calm you down, and so you don't make silly mistakes, and calm the people around you down. And then it'll signal, purify your water. But most of all, in learning how to start a fire with either a flint, steel, and a bow drill, I think it gives you confidence that you can conquer whatever situation you're in. Now, it could be a survival situation, or it could be unrelated to survival, but just something in life that you can do something like start a fire without matches that you never thought you could. So it's kind of building a self-confidence, and that kind of goes beyond just fire building. What do you think, Glenn?
Yeah, we oftentimes talk about the rules of threes to help guide your decision making when you're in some kind of a situation that basically you can live 3 minutes without air and 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, that sort of a thing. So the idea of shelter, water, food, fire is a key part in all of those, because a fire can help keep you warm in your shelter, or if you don't even have a shelter, keeping you warm. Fire purifies water, helps you cook your food. So it's just a foundational skill to have.
Well, I think a lot of people would say, why this and not a BIC?
BICs are great as long as we always say that always have backups for whatever you do. So I know personally, if I'm going just on a camping trip, my first way to start fire is with a BIC. And then my backup is a flint and steel, because that can get wet and it'll still work. And then my backup to my backup is actually a bow drill, but I don't carry one with me. After all these years, I can go out in the woods and build a bow drill from scratch. Even though it'll take about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I still have that available. So BICs are great, but get lost, don't work, run out of fuel, or you just need a backup.
There's an old saying that says 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So if what you have is one BIC lighter, it's almost like not having anything, because you could lose that lighter, you could break it and leak all the fluid out of it, and then it won't work. So having alternatives is a good thing. As Tom says, if everything else fails, you can go out and get some sticks and make a friction set and get fire even with nothing else.
In fact, in our Fire Volume 1, Glen did that. We did that in 3 series, and we made a bow drill. We made a fire out of a ready-made bow drill, and then Glen was doing that section, and he made a bow drill with just what was available on his person, including a knife. And then he went out in the woods and basically made a bow drill with nothing at all. And I remember we used spruce rootlets for the cord and all, and we made 3 fires out of that, and the rootlets were still good. So what nature provides you is enough to not only survive, but do it relatively easily, if you have the skill.
Well, what's the age limit on primitive fire making skills?
Well, I know in teaching in classes, Glenn, what's the youngest we had? You think 7 or 8?
There's not a hard and fast. They basically needed the strength and the stamina to crank out a coal, but probably around 9 or 10 is a workable age. The exception when 7 or 8, but
Wendy, in the comments here on the internet, I was at a show, a knife show down in Cambridge, Ohio, 2 or 3 years back, and there was a 5-year-old boy there, and he was interested in survival, and his mom asked if he could come up and hold the bow drill set, and I said sure. We came up, and then he goes, "Can I try it?" And I said sure. And he was a pretty mature 5-year-old, but with a little of my help, we actually got a coal out of that, and his mom filmed it, and we put that on the internet. It's on YouTube. We'll get that link and put that down. So that's the youngest I've ever seen was a 5-year-old. But
great.
like Glenn said, if you're 10 years old, you could do it by yourself with some work. But if you had 2 10-year-olds there, we call it double teaming, and it's pretty consistent getting a fire with if you have 2 people, 2 10-year-olds.
And is there an upper age limit?
Well, Glenn and I can still do it.
The first time that I taught a fire class, there was a grandmother who was in her 90s, and over a period of 3 days, she struggled and worked at it and never got her bow drill to operate. And a couple of different times during that period, I would ask if she would mind if I double teamed with her to give her the feel for it. And she never wanted to do it. She really thought, if I can't do it myself, then what good is it? So just let me keep working at it. At the end of the 3 days, she still didn't have her own fire, and everybody packed up and they left. And I went back to go police up the area, make sure everything had been picked up, and discovered that she was there and getting into position to try it one last time. And I stood back and I was real quiet and just watched. And it was one of those miraculous things that she found the strength inside somewhere. She dug in deep, and when she was just spent and stopped, her spindle flopped to the side and she sat back, and the smoke just kept coming up. She got her coal, and I walked over and I said, take several deep breaths, just wait, it'll be okay. And she was able to get the coal into the tinder bundle and blew it into a flame. And then I heard all this applause behind us, that 3 or 4 of the other students had come back as well, and they were all standing back watching. And she was 93 or 94 years old, and was able to do it after considerable amount of practice, but got it done.
Got a pretty wide range there. 5 to 93, 94.
Right. Well, say a word, because I with my own struggles with primitive fire starting, I can say that the word persistence applies. How would you state that?
Persistence, yes. And there's 2 aspects, in my opinion. I'm sure Glenn will have another take, but it's persistence to first attempt it and try to get over that mental block of, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. Mm-hmm. And then it's the physical components of body position and making sure that one hand is locked into your wrist and you're bowing level, and you're breathing, because most people hold their breath. Once you get that done, as you're bowing, once you think you have a coal or think you have it, it's, I'm going to give it 10 more strokes for insurance. And I like how Glenn puts it in the classes. You have to dig deep, and you have that little extra energy just to keep that bowl moving back and forth. So those are it's persistence, it's a little bit of technique, and it's a positive mindset. You hear that all the time.
Yep.
Well, I think it makes sense to me, because one of the things I've heard you talk about is the fact that if somebody gets lost, their biggest enemy can be their own head.
Yep. I may jump back in here on that idea of persistence. Persistence is especially important up front. I know that I've seen amongst students that those that get their fire pretty quickly and pretty easily, probably in the long run, you come back a year later, they're probably not going to be doing as well as the person who struggled to get their first fire and kept motivated, kept working at it, because the person who gets that fire quickly and easily probably is going to get the attitude of, it's no big deal, I can do this, and they won't practice at it, they won't persist and develop their technique, and then when they want to use it, they can't do it. Whereas the one who did persist and struggled and learned the hard way, then they kept at it. When they left the class, they went back home and they put in that dirt time and continued to practice at it and develop the skill. Early on, a lot of people worry about making the perfect set and what's the best wood to use and where am I going to get a lubricant for the handhold out in the woods and this sort of a thing. And I've been there, done that myself. But once you persisted long enough to where you've developed your technique, it turns out persistence isn't that big of a thing, because you've got the style, you've got the form, you've got the skill, and you don't need to persist. You, like Tom will oftentimes, before he'll do the first demonstration in a class, he'll say, this is pretty hard, and it's kind of humid today, and the conditions aren't very good, so I might have to work at this a little bit to get a coal out of this and blow it into flames. And in 30 seconds, he's got the coal and he's blowing it into flames. Didn't have to persist, didn't have to sit there and crank and crank and crank and work hard. When you know what you're doing, you've got the skill and you've got technique, you make it happen. So the persistence is getting to that point.
And Wendy, a lot of times we'll have a lot of couples take our classes, and the ladies typically don't have the upper body strength as the men typically have. And so where in our classes, usually the women get the fires first because they tend to listen more and follow directions. But besides that, the men think they can muscle through it, and that always doesn't work. And the women will just go a little bit longer. And that little bit longer, when you're building up that heat for the bow drill, that's all it takes. So in that, doing it 30 seconds longer than somebody with a lot of upper body strength, you'll get the same result. You'll still get that the coal out of it. We also like to, in our classes, we'll offer people for their first fire a glass handhold for the bow drill fire. And this could be a tip for the people in the fire challenge. Because when you're first starting it and you've never gotten a bow drill fire before, you still have that little voice in your head saying, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I've seen other people, but I don't know if I can do it. So by having that glass handhold, it makes it a little bit easier to get your first fire, and then that voice goes away. And so then you get one or two more fires with that glass handhold, and then you go to a wooden handhold or other natural handhold. But it's that first fire you want to shut up that little voice. And the easiest way to do that is to stack the deck in your favor to get that first fire.
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the challenge. And I think it's great fun to do something like this so that people can practice and hopefully teach others. What do you think?
Yes, I think this would be a good point to give the people that are watching this, they're interested in survival and interested in the challenge. Maybe, you have two guys on here that have done it a few times, to give our personal tips. Glenn, do you have, for the people doing the challenge, some inside tips on flint and steel to get a fire, and some tips on the bow drill to help them out so they can win some of the prizes? I'll let you go first.
Well, having a good steel with a sharp edge is always the place to start. The better your sparks, the easier it is to get the apparatus to work. And I particularly like to use a char cloth that is made from the shredded cloth. Instead of using a piece of denim or a t-shirt to make the char cloth, that'll make it, you can use those, but it makes kind of a hard surface that a lot of times the sparks will bounce off of them. And so using a shredded cloth is a great way to make some char cloth that just like, it just grabs the sparks right off the bat and propagates them really well. So that's a good place to start for the flint and steel. With the bow drill, having a good set of, I start with some cedar, for example. A piece of cedar planking is a great place to start with, because it's just kind of the right density. It's sort of soft, but not so much that it's just going to grind it all apart or fall apart on you. So start with good wood for your first efforts is a good way to start with that.
Okay. One tip I'll give for flint and steel, a lot of times, again, it's a glancing motion like I showed when we did our live, but if you want to stack the deck even more in your favor, rather than hitting it directly across the face, if you tilt your steel so the edge of this flint hits the edge, you're actually going to put more pressure and get more sparks coming off there. So it's sort of flat on the edge. That'd be a good tip for the flint and steel. And for the bow drill, again, the two things that I think are the most important that I see when people can do this, they usually get a fire, is keeping that top arm locked into your shin. You want to do full strokes. You don't want to short stroke it full length of the bow, and you have to breathe. And it sounds silly, but holding your breath, you're going to run out of air in about 30 seconds to a minute, and you're going to wonder why you're out of breath, and the reason is you haven't breathed. So those things would be my tips.
I want to ask you both to tell me real quickly what you'll be looking for in choosing a winner. Glenn,
what's important to you?
Well, I always like a little flair and style. Is a little pizzazz is nice. So you know, in flint and steel, if you want to make a go at it with some pyrites, hey, I'll give you extra bonus points for that. But good form is indicative of your skills. So good form, efficiency. Good if you can get the say the bow drill working in before you burn your all the way through the fireboard. But if you can get it done quickly and smoothly, that's a good start.
Wendy, I don't want to copy what Glenn said, but I'm in about the same boat as what he was saying. It's, you know, not how fast you do it. Even if it's not, you don't get your spark the first time, because when we did the Facebook live streaming, just the sparks wouldn't hit on the char cloth. So it took me a while to get a spark to hold. But it's your smoothness, I think, your fluidness. And that just shows, you know, that you've done it before. You're not getting overexcited, because in a real survival situation, you're going to have to keep your wits about you, and smoothness and consistency are going to be the important things.
It's kind of an efficiency matter. If you're actually in any kind of a survival situation, everything's about calories in and calories out. And so if you're efficient, that's fewer calories required, and that's a good thing. So getting the form good, having a good set to work with, whether it's flint and steel or the bow drill, and getting that coal efficiently, and converting that into a flame before you burn it out, or, you know, it takes forever to get it going. That's all good stuff.
Great. Well, before we run out of time here, I want to tell everyone that the rules and all the information you need for the challenge are at survivalschool.com, and also on the Midwest Native Skills Facebook page. Tom did do a demonstration, a live demonstration of both the bow drill and the flint and steel, so you can watch that if you want more tips. And I hope everybody gives this a try and get your kids involved, and let's loss-proof our kids and practice our skills and have some fun and maybe win some prizes.
And not to be an advertisement, Wendy, but if they don't have a bow drill set or don't know how to build it, we put those bundles together where you get a bow drill set and you get the Fire Volume 1 that Glen and I put together that'll show you step by step how to build one from scratch and show you that technique. So that's
Right.
always a backup if they want to learn it from scratch.
And maybe we can have a couple more conversations going forward before the challenge or at the challenge. And the deadline is October 22nd, and the winners will be announced on the Facebook Live on October 29th.
And maybe we can have people that do have questions to write them in, and then see if we can get Glenn back here, and we'll talk about the questions that the specific ones that the people have.
Sounds great. Well, thank you both, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you give it a try.